This series is all about easy medieval food. Easy to cook, delicious to eat. Today I'm cooking Cormarye, marinated pork loin, to be served with Benes Yfryed, fried beans. So these two spices, coriander seed and caraway seed, they're going into my Cormarye spice mix. So I've got a tablespoon plus a teaspoon of coriander seeds, and I have a tablespoon of caraway seeds. I'm just going to toast them for about a minute or so. Just brings out the flavour a little bit more. Smell the caraway coming through. So I'm going to grind up the spices now for the Cormarye spice mix. In go the coriander seeds and caraway seeds. I've got a teaspoon of coarse sea salt here. A teaspoon of black peppercorns. And then I've got a teaspoon of mini long peppers. Normally long peppers look like this, and so you'd only need about 2 or 3 of those. But I rather like my little ones, so they're going to be used. They taste very similar. Make sure that it's finely ground. Yeah, that's just about right. I'm making a marinade using 1 tablespoon of this spice mix and 250 millilitres of a decent dry red wine. I'm using a Malbec. The rest of the spice mix is stored in an airtight jar. To this I add 3 cloves of garlic, grated. The pork I'm using is from a farm that specialises in outdoor reared pigs and poultry. These are their very tasty loin chops. The medieval recipe uses whole loins, and the cook is told to flay off the skin and prick it well with a knife and lay it in the sauce. In other words, they were to remove the skin, prick the meat well with a knife and lay it in the sauce or marinade. So I'm approximating this method with my 2 loin chops, and they get marinated in the fridge for 24 hours. The next day I set about preparing the Benes Yfryed. I cut a medium onion in half and sit the 2 halves in a pan of good chicken stock. This simmers away for about 15 minutes or until the onion is tender. Then, along with 3 fat cloves of garlic, they get minced. Then fried in olive oil for 5 or 6 minutes. The par cooking of onions is a very common method in medieval cookery. Occasionally onions just get fried, as we do today, but more often than not they're pre-cooked or par cooked before any frying or further cooking takes place. Now my nose is telling me that the onions and garlic are ready. Cooked out the very strong onion flavour, but if you really want to be sure, you just taste of it. Perfect. Right, I'm going to add a little bit more olive oil now. And in go my black-eyed beans. I've cheated by using a tin of black-eyed beans. I should also say that in England they would have probably used fava beans, but I can't eat fava beans, so I'm using what the Italians would have used in the medieval period, black-eyed beans. They used fava beans as well, but black-eyed beans were popular and they appear in medieval Italian recipes. You do have to season this well. It takes quite a lot of salt, so I'm going to just start with half a teaspoon of salt. I should stress that my black-eyed beans were just in water, they weren't in salted water. So if yours are in salted water, you might need to use quite a lot less salt. But do it to taste. I'm using here my own spice mix. This is my version of powder douce. It's based on an authentic Italian recipe from about the 14th century. There's a recipe for it on my website. I'll leave the link in the video description. So that's half a teaspoon of powder douce. It's such a lovely spice mix. It does have a kind of sweetness in the aroma. I'm just going to leave these on a very low heat now whilst I get on with cooking the Cormarye. You'll have to excuse the noise of the extractor fan. What I'm doing here is just giving a bit of colour to the edges of my pork chops. Yeah, that looks nice, doesn't it? We're not completely rendering the fat down, so you only need to leave it on for a minute or two, and then we'll actually get the chop charred. If your pan's very hot, it only takes about, well, up to 2 minutes, I would say. If you haven't got a frying pan that can handle the heat, then 3 to 4 minutes. That's each side. That goes onto my baking tray lined with foil. I'm going to do the other one, repeat the process, and then they're going to be going into the oven. I'm going to be reusing these juices and fat in a kind of medieval gravy, but in the meantime these have got to go into the oven. The oven has been preheated to 160 degrees Fan, that's 180 Celsius or 360 Fahrenheit. They cook for 10 minutes. I'm draining off the juices for my medieval gravy. Just going to rest those just for 5 minutes. So what I've got here are the deglazings of the pan. I added the chicken stock that I was using for Benes Yfryed, the accompanying dish, and that deglazed the pan, and I've got some lovely tasting meaty fatty juices and a little bit of chicken stock. And what I'll do is I'll strain this before I serve it so that it gets rid of the kind of slightly ugly black bits. But that's essentially how they made medieval gravy. According to the recipe, the drippings from the roasting meat, they used a whole pork loin for this, and they roasted it on a spit. The drippings went into a posnet, a small pan, and then you just add the chicken broth or beef broth, capon broth. Those were the more normal, typical broths that they had. You added that, and that was your gravy that you served with the meat. So it's time to tuck into this delicious pork chop. I'm going to dip it in some of my medieval gravy. Well, that is beautiful pork, I have to say. It's very tender, just nicely cooked, not overcooked and dry. And the flavours are just there subtly. They're not meant to overpower the dish. Caraway and coriander are quite strong spices, particularly caraway. They're just there in the background, giving a little extra dimension to the pork. I need to try some of those fried beans, don't I? They look really good, don't they? Lots of onion and garlic with the beans, that's how I like it. This is so simple and easy to make. I mean, if you wanted to, you could just fry the onions rather than go through the process of part cooking them. But even with that, it's still an easy dish, and it's so tasty. It's one of my favourites, actually. Links to the recipes are given in the video description below.